against current New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and he's here to discuss with us the mounting crises facing the Cuomo administration there in Albany in general. Mark, thanks for being with us tonight.
Happy to be with you. Thank you.
My first question, in a statement released yesterday by the governor, he said, quote, "I'm sorry." And for many reporters who have followed his administration, his political rise, not many have ever heard him say that. So they think things might be pretty bad there at the State House in Albany. Do you think that's the case?
Well, certainly things are bad. The governor basically admitted to sexual harassment. He basically said that he conducted himself in a way that was wrong. But let's be clear, his apology wasn't an apology. He apologized for the accuser not understanding the joke he was telling, the mentor he was acting out as. And the bottom line is that the governor has yet to take responsibility for what are clear violations of the very law that he helped put in place. Certainly, this behavior would have been bad enough in the 1980s, but this is 2021 in the state of New York. And keep in mind, what the governor did was tell the world that this young woman, courageous enough to speak out, was a sexual assault victim, and that he was mentoring, and that he may have said things that other people might not find appropriate. What we don't find appropriate, Governor, is the actions that you took, and quite frankly, he needs to be held accountable for it.
And in that statement, he said that some of the jokes that he does tell his staffers, even his family and friends, are perceived to be just funny and silly. But obviously, these two women, Lindsey Boylan and trying to blank on the name here, Charlotte Bennett, his two accusers who have accused him of sexual harassment, don't see that the same way, obviously. This all kind of goes into this next conversation that a lot of people in his party are having right now, this intra-party kind of squabble about should he resign. And a lot of people, several of his fellow assemblymen, state senators like Alessandra Biaggi, Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara, are calling for him to resign. Do you think he will?
Well, I don't know if he will, but he should. Quite frankly, he is incapable of governing and unfit to serve. Honestly, the accused doesn't get to define what harassment is to the accuser. And even in the last 48 hours, you saw this. The governor had a tortured weekend. He didn't start with an apology. He ended with this, I'm sorry you didn't get the joke kind of apology, after attempting to manipulate, quite frankly, both the individual, the young lady who had the courage to come forward, her own words, attempting to use them against her, and obstruct what should be an independent investigation by the New York State Attorney General. He is not fit to serve. He should not remain in office, and he is not now capable of governing, and that ought to be very, very clear.
But he has faced many political crises before. He's in his second term. He, if he runs, which he presumably will in 2022, going for his third term. So the question is, can he weather these storms like he has in the past?
I don't think so. And quite frankly, think about what it says about someone who claimed to have championed women's protection laws. Think about what it says that this individual would think that he ought to run for re-election. But at the end of this, it's really not about Andrew Cuomo's career. It's about the careers of the women that he has devastated. And we know he even acknowledges that there may very well be others. It is a pattern of behavior that this governor is engaged in, both from pay-to-play politics to a horrific set of decisions during this pandemic, to personal action that he's just unwilling to take responsibility for, and just can't stand for re-election. I mean, that just cannot be possible. But it would speak volumes about the Democratic Party in New York and about himself if they thought this was an appropriate candidate. He ought to resign.
And the story isn't going away. And we've seen prominent progressives from New York City, like AOC, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio today said, "It's sickened me. It's sickened me, just disgusting, creepy." Those were his words. And I know they have their own contentious relationship. But is there any staying power to this kind of groundswell of Democratic kind of support for, holding him accountable?
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? I mean, the Democrats control both houses of the state legislature. We have one party control here in New York State. It really is now up to them to take the next step. I mean, the right thing to do would be to allow the Attorney General unfettered access to conduct a sweeping investigation, and the state legislature ought to initiate an impeachment proceeding. At the very least, that would strip him of his emergency powers and would begin the process of subpoenaing and bringing in the right individuals to answer real questions. But that's on them, and that really is a test, I think, of who they are and who they want New Yorkers to believe they are. But at the end of the day, remember, we know there are two women who came forward courageously. We know, and I said this in 2018, he has a pattern of belittling and dismissing individuals who feel harassed. In fact, in his own administration, 2018, two women came forward claiming sexual harassment within the administration. They fired one of them and took retaliatory action against another. In moving that individual to a hall closet office, they have this pattern of behavior that really needs to come to an end.
And not to mention Governor Cuomo's former New York Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, who was wrapped up in his own series of allegations of just more than sexual harassment, rather, and had to resign over those. And not trying to draw a comparison, but just to your point about the pattern in Albany in this administration, I kind of wanted to kind of switch the subject of this conversation to just another scandal that he's facing, and could this kind of be compounded on that, or is it not getting as much as attention now because of these sexual assault allegations, or harassment allegations, is the nursing home scandal, where the administration admitted, frankly, to undercounting some of the COVID-19 deaths in nursing homes by a lot. And so is that getting enough attention now with this going on?
You know, it is interesting, right? Certainly that conversation's been somewhat eclipsed, but I think both will continue to come to light. This governor and this administration made the decision to send individuals who were sick with COVID back to nursing homes. And then when they realized how they couldn't have figured this out to begin with, when they realized that it was leading to death, they decided to manipulate the data. In fact, by the way, they made entire policy decisions. The nation made policy decisions based, in fact, on a lot of the experience and the data they saw here in New York. So when this administration obstructed a federal investigation, hid those numbers, manipulated that data, and led to thousands upon thousands of lost lives, that's a crime in and of itself. That obviously needs to be, they need to be held accountable for that. And we hope, frankly, that both see the light of day. The families that lost loved ones. I lost my father to this virus in a hospital setting, not in a nursing home. I know what it's like to feel the human toll of the virus. But if that is eclipsed, or if that is ignored, that will be an enormous injustice to the thousands of families who lost loved ones.
And going back to your previous point about an effort to impeach Cuomo in Albany, I believe a Republican member of the Assembly has already tried to do so, but it remains to be seen if any of his Democratic counterparts would ever attempt to. But you're seeing, though, this kind of emboldening of fellow Democrats in the state to, not be quite timid or afraid of the governor and kind of speak out against him. And we're seeing that as well with Attorney General Letitia James, who just yesterday, the governor's office and her office went back and forth about 4 times about what exactly to do to appoint this special independent investigator. Can you kind of give us a sense of that? Because that in and of itself was kind of complex and all over the place yesterday.
Then he attempted to obstruct an independent investigation by the attention his misbehavior. And what occurred was pathetic. Instead of giving the referral to the Attorney General, which is this antiquated section of state law, the Attorney General can't investigate the executive branch unless it's approved by the governor, which is bizarre in and of itself. But instead of allowing that to happen, he offered up an alternative where where the Attorney General would be permitted to conduct a review if she worked with his appointment to the New York State Court of Appeals. It was handcuffing an independently elected a New York State Attorney General and trying to obstruct what ought to be a totally independent investigation. And that, again, that in and of itself shows his inability to acknowledge his own behavior, but also the necessity to have that kind of independent investigation. And it really was a pathetic and tortured experience for about 48 hours.
Yeah, and that's right. The governor's office finally relented and referred it just independently to Tish James' office, and so she will appoint whoever independently to look into this, into those allegations. But going forward, let's talk about your kind of trajectory. Do you think you will run again for governor, possibly against Governor Cuomo? Right now, you serve as the Dutchess County executive, and that comprises, for those watching, Poughkeepsie, Beacon, and the Hudson River Valley there. What are your political prospects going forward? Does this kind of incentivize you to get in there again?
Listen, I have the great honor of having 2 million votes in 2018, the most votes of anybody coming second since 1998. So at the very least, I owe those people at least some consideration, and a good number of folks throughout the state are asking me to consider running again. I will say this: we are in the midst of grappling our way out of this pandemic, very close. Vaccine distribution, we've got a lot of work to do. At the moment, that's my focus, but certainly I'm looking to the future as well, and we'll consider my options. There are those who have asked me to consider running for Congress as well. I feel I have something to add, but I will spend a great deal of time attempting to clean a New York State government of this corrupted administration that continues to be an embarrassment, quite frankly, paralyze our ability to succeed as a state.
Can a Republican win at the state level in New York in 2021?
I think the right one can. I do. I do think that New Yorkers see one party rule and that it's corrupted the state government. This state government is a cesspool of bad behavior. New York remains the least business friendly, the highest tax, lead the nation, and more people leaving New York to other states than any other state in America. There's a lot of room for improvement, and I think as you see the rest of the country trying to claw its way back after this pandemic, New York is going to lag behind it. It's ineffective, incompetent, and quite frankly, callous kind of government leaders. And I do think there's an opportunity, but it's got to be somebody who reaches out across the spectrum and really can speak to hardworking families and say, enough's enough. Let's make New York affordable. Let's make it accessible. Let's ensure that we're doing and making this government serve the people. I think that is a recipe for success. But make no mistake, it's a steep climb in a state that's overwhelmingly one party.
And just lastly for you, Mark, let's talk about, though, Governor Cuomo's legacy. What will it be in the state? Because, we're coming, I think today, March 1st, 2021, with the 1-year anniversary of the first confirmed COVID case in New York. And at the very start of the pandemic, Cuomo was hailed for his handling of it, for how he got, on TV every single day, updating New Yorkers on what they needed to know. And since then, he has quite frankly fallen from grace, from that kind of lofty position there that many people around the country put him in, because that was, essentially they were, hoisting him on a pedestal, like look what he's doing. That's no longer operative. That's kind of evaporated at this point. What do you make of that?
We all had hope, even I did early on in the pandemic, that he was providing the right leadership. But I think looking back, this will be an epic failure of his own doing, because of his own inability to see his own faults and, quite frankly, to be inclusive, to be transparent, and to be responsible. I think that we will find that this is sadly an embarrassing and an epic failure and undoing that we're making. I will tell you, I learned early on in public office to not believe your own press. I think that he spent a little bit too much time not only believing his own press, but quite frankly thinking he could write it. And that in of itself, I think, will prove to be part of the undoing.
And since your run for governor against him as a political opponent, have you been in touch with him, been in contact with him since then?
Yeah, we've spoken a few times, and I'd be very candid. He called me when my father passed last April. It was a very kind conversation. But again, I think that we had hopes early on in this pandemic that he was providing the right kind of leadership, only to find decision after decision that it was more about him and less about New Yorkers. And I do think New Yorkers deserve a governor that will humble him or herself before the voters and actually make the government work for the people. I think we will find that just isn't the case.
All right, Mark Molinaro, thank you so much for joining us, the former 2018 Republican candidate for governor in New York and the Dutchess County, New York executive. See you again, hopefully.
Hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation right there, but wanted to bring you this news just coming out in the past hour or so. Governor Cuomo accused of yet another unwanted advance, but this one at a wedding. The story broken by New York Times saying that this woman right here, you can see her in the picture, that's Anna Rutsch. She had never met Governor Cuomo before, but encountered him at a crowded New York City wedding reception in September of 2019. This photo taken on that same day. She said that the governor was working the room after toasting the newlyweds and then came up to her. She's now 33 years old, but was much younger at the time. She thanked him for the kind words about her friends. But then later, Cuomo put his hand on her back. That's what she told the New York Times when she removed his hand with her own. Anna Rutsch recalled that the governor remarked that she seemed aggressive and placed his hands on her cheeks. He asked if he could kiss her loudly enough for a friend standing nearby to hear these remarks. Anna Rutsch telling, of course, the New York Times about this experience here, and this photo has been plastered all over social media. Again, this is the third allegation coming against Governor Cuomo. We're going to continue to follow this story here on News Now, but we're going to take you out to remarks from Mayor Bill de Blasio. We've showed you little snippets of what he had to say, but we'll play out his entire press conference from earlier this morning and then move into some of the other breaking news stories of the day.